Yes, with 5,000 votes already, no big deal.
Oh,
No big deal. No big deal.
With the current NFL COVID testing protocols, do you think coaches should be required to wear a mask on the sideline? Question mark.
Yep, great question.
Yep, 25%. Nope, 74%.
Wow.
People are speaking.
A lot of people listening right there that didn't get the image. It was 25.4 and 74.6 because 25 and 74 is definitely not 100%. So people probably thought there was potentially another option, but no, we just didn't want to dive into the finer details of that entire
Yeah, I'm not a decimal guy.
And this coach's sideline thing is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Last night, Sean Payton, John Gruden, I mean, they were just like every other coach, basically, on Monday Night Football. Even after hearing about there potentially being fines levied against coaches for not having, it was very hard, I think, for John Gruden and Sean Payton to wear that. I think it's very hard for any coach to wear that, to be honest with you, because whenever you have it up there, we've all heard people speak through the mask now at this point. Plus, they're speaking into a tiny little microphone that's supposed to go through the air, right? It's flying through the sky, and then it goes into a helmet that doesn't have great speakers either. So whenever you have a muffle, plus you're a little bit older, probably harder to breathe for some of these football coaches. When they're sending in plays, if there's any sense in their eyes that the quarterback or the linebacker can't hear exactly what they're saying, they're going to rip that thing off. You know why? Because their jobs to them are much more important than this particular moment of something that maybe isn't at the top of my mind at this exact moment because I'm trying to win a football game because there's billions and billions of dollars at stake. And I find it hard for an old dog to learn new tricks, and that's what most head coaches are, by the way. Old dog, aside from Sean McVay, who's been around football a long time, has been doing something one particular way for a long time, and Cliff Kingsbury and Zach, there's a couple, but a large majority of coaches have been doing something the same exact way for a long, long time. Routine creatures is what football people are. So whenever you add that into their thing, and you add all these tests that they're taking, it's probably hard for them to say, you know what, I'm going to change everything that I do here. I'm going to make it more difficult for my quarterback to hear me or my linebacker to hear me, because even though I've taken 6 tests this week that have all come back negative, and nobody is allowed in this building unless they have a negative result on their COVID, it's going to be hard for me to want to keep this mask on strictly because of optics, because that's what it feels like it is. The NFL is fining coaches $100,000 each Sunday, and each of their teams is fined another $250,000. So obviously the NFL is cracking down on this very, very hard. $100,000 for the coach, $250,000 to the team, $350,000 combined. If they don't want to put the mask over their face whenever they're on national television, that's a fine. So now if you're a producer and you're running the show, you know if you cut to a coach who does not have a mask on, you're potentially costing that coach $100,000 and a team $250,000. And I'm sure there are some producers or directors that get off on that, like trying to catch people and wanting people to do that. But I'm sure there's a lot of producers that are like, well, so we're just fucking over this guy if we put him on camera. So I think it's very difficult to ask these coaches to do that when all they're worried about is just getting a call in or coaching or somebody hearing them or seeing the words they're saying, by the way, because 80% of communication is nonverbal. We know that, so you got to read. I mean, there's just a lot in there that it makes me think like these coaches are being told they're getting fined $100,000 and their team's getting fined $250,000. I would assume, now I'm not in these meetings anymore, I don't know all these coaches that are getting fined. I would assume that a lot of these coaches are going, well, what the fuck? How are we? Everybody in here is supposedly negative. And by the way, if they're not, let's not let them in here. Yeah. Let's worry about that a lot more. And it was the same thing that we talked about with the NBA bubble, how the players were on the bench. And they, by the way, towards the end here, you've seen none of that. But at the beginning, they were all required to have masks on the bench. And I'm like, they're in a bubble. Like, they're actually in a bubble. You go into the bubble so that you don't. And they're like, well, they could be asymptomatic, which at the one point didn't show up on tests, I guess, allegedly. But we're at a point now where I feel like the testing is more advanced than it's ever been. It's quicker than it's ever been. And if people are getting positive tests, especially those who are getting tested every single day, I assume they're getting isolated very quickly, and then there's contact tracing. I feel like what the NFL has done, what the NBA has done, what the MLS did, what the WNBA did, what all these people are doing, investing in the testing to keep the people positive away from the other people, so make sure they have a league, which ultimately makes sure they have money coming into their pockets, which is all that matters. I just think punishing these guys for doing something that seems like it's the right thing to do, not that big of a deal, is a tough thing to do. And I think you're going to see a lot of coaches just take that fine. I think last night you'll see John Gruden get fined. Sean Payton was just chilling that entire time like he had a turtleneck on, it looked like. But they're obviously doing a lot of speaking, though. That's why they're the head coach. And I think we've all understood that it's difficult to speak with that mask on. And a lot of people say, well, put the shield on like Andy Reid does. Okay, let's put the shield on then. And then you're just saying, well, the mask doesn't mean shit. We're just making it look as if it means something. Because I don't know what much about COVID. But unless the rules of COVID are that, like, you know how they say hot air rises and COVID drops? Is that what unless that's the rule is COVID drops, then there's no way that mask is anywhere near what a mask is supposed to be. And it's just some. So I think there's gonna be some pushback from coaches, and I'm not sure you're gonna see a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the poll is so good, because it's like all these things are kind of hypocritical to each other at this point. What are you shoving something up my nose for 6 times a day? If I can't even talk to my guy. It's very interesting. And the NFL is like, hey, we got to be safe. We got to set a standard for people that when you're out and about, you're doing this. Well, then I think if I'm the coach, I'm holding a thing that says, I don't have a mask on because I was tested 6 times this week. Plus everybody around me was tested 6 times this week. If you're not in that situation, you should wear a mask. Like if that's, I think that is something they should do, because I just think it's very difficult. And I just don't know how coaches are going to react in a positive fashion to this. Now they're losing $350,000 for their team.
Well, and even the guys who are up in the booth. I mean, there are dudes and coaches who are on the same team who have been around each other all week and who are in a closed room, and they still have to wear masks. It just doesn't make any sense.
100 players running around the field too. Without
without them.
Yeah, we get tested in here like once a month or whatever. And I assume that we all have. I got tested like 4 times there in a 4-week run. Foxy did as well. Mansuri did. Nick had to get tested to go do the WWE, and we all obviously tested negative, but you don't think you have it, by the way, until you go get tested for it, and you see somebody in a gas mask shove something down your nose. You're like, oh shit! Like I think I got it. Then it comes back negative. You're like, okay, I don't have it. Well, that means then everybody I've hung around. Then, if we know anything about this virus, that means nobody that I've been around has it. It's it's a celebration for the entire team.
Very much so. And then last night, both coaches already had it. So I don't know. Is that a thing?
Don't they have antibodies?
I don't know.
Isn't that something that we've already talked about?
The antibodies.
They have the antibodies.
Cure. By the way, I think there's a chance that like 90% of America probably has the antibodies and probably had COVID at some point.
Sure.
I think we all had it. I think I had it for sure. I mean, I never lost taste or smell, so I guess that would kind of combat my thoughts of that. But hey, could have been asymptomatic. It didn't even know. It was just walking around spreading it.
That's right.
Oh, but wait. Then obviously now it stays in the air longer than it's ever stayed before. Hey, we don't know jack shit about this, and I guess that's why the NFL is like, we need you to wear a mask.
Cover the rest.
It could just, we could get fined or sued for all this later. So.
Is it safe to say that a majority of coaches and players at this point are Team Kirk Cousins with "If I die, I die"? If I get it, I get it.
I don't know if any of them think if I die, I die. I don't know how many you can put into that category. I've learned a lot about that, by the way. I guess Kirk's dad is a pastor, so I would assume, I don't know much about the pastor family life, but I would assume going to heaven is like an honor.
They get a free ticket at the gate.
He's made his peace.
So they're like ready to go or whatever. For me, I think a lot of people are like, are you sure you're going? I'm like, no, I have no idea.
Not sure, actually.
It's a roll of the dice at this
Hey,
point.
if you die, will you be happy? It's like, no. Are you content with dying? I don't think so. Like, where the fuck am I going? Kirk Herbstreit's like, I know where I'm going.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to the best place of all. Or Kirk Herbstreit. No, sorry, Kirk Cousins.
Herbstreit
too, probably.
Respectfully
But Kirk
so.
Cousins knows exactly where he's going. So whenever they say, like, if I die, I die, he's like, me and my dad, we're going to heaven. No big deal. I'm going to go have a great time. This is actually, by the way, you ever talk to the super religious people? We had an FCA guy named Eric.
I can't wait.
Fellowship of Christian Athletes. They make it seem like life here is like hell compared to what it's going to be. Like, oh, where we're headed is so much better than here. I'm like, really?
Are you sure?